Hey folks, today I'm taking a step back from the hype and looking at the LG 49UH5CB digital signage display from the angle that matters most to anyone actually planning to put a screen on a wall and run content on it every day. I know the biggest hesitation when you're considering a piece of commercial hardware is whether you're paying for a feature you'll ever use, or worse, ending up with a unit that looks great on paper but trips you up once you mount it. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So let's break down the real-world experience, the hidden trade-offs, and who should actually spend their budget on this model versus who's better off looking elsewhere. First off, the thing that most buyers ask about is brightness. At 500 nits, the 49-inch panel is bright enough for most indoor environments, think retail aisles, lobby walls, or a cafeteria menu board, but it won't cut through direct sunlight. If you were hoping to hang this behind a storefront window, you'll quickly notice washed-out images on bright afternoons. In practice, I've seen it perform just fine in a conference room that gets a lot of natural light, especially when you keep the content high contrast and avoid pastel backgrounds. The Edge LED backlight helps keep the unit thin, but it can introduce a slight hot spot in the corners when you push a uniform white screen. For most signage use, the effect is barely noticeable, but it's something to keep in mind if you need perfectly uniform brightness for video walls. Resolution is the next practical factor. The 4K UHD panel, 3840 by 2160, gives you a pixel density that makes text look sharp even when you're standing a few feet away. That's a real advantage for places that rely on detailed information, like a hospital waiting area where you display appointment times and directions. The trade-off is that you'll need content that matches the native resolution. Scaling 1080p assets up to 4K can make them look fuzzy unless the signage software handles the upscaling intelligently. Most modern content management platforms do a decent job, but it adds an extra step if you're pulling graphics from older templates. Now, let's talk about the day-to-day workflow. The unit ships with a standard set of HDMI and DisplayPort inputs, plus a USB-C for firmware updates. There's no built-in media player, so you'll need an external stick, mini PC, or a network signage server to actually run the content. For a small boutique that already uses a Raspberry Pi as a player, that's no big deal. For a larger operation that expects a plug-and-play solution, the lack of an integrated player can feel like an extra purchase you didn't anticipate. On the upside, the open input selection means you aren't locked into a proprietary ecosystem. You can pair it with any software that outputs over HDMI, which is a relief if you're already invested in a platform like Scala or BrightSign. Installation is where many commercial displays trip up, and the 49UH5CB is fairly straightforward. The Visa mounting pattern is 600,400 millimeters, and the panel weighs about 30 kilograms, so a sturdy wall mount is a must. The manual includes a wall plate that aligns the screw holes with the panel's slim bezel, making a flush look achievable if you're comfortable with a bit of drilling. One thing to watch out for is the cable run. Because the power cord is on the back left corner, you'll need a short extension if your power outlet isn't perfectly aligned. In my own test, a 2-meter power cable and a single HDMI cable kept the back tidy, but the back panel doesn't have a built-in cable management channel, so you'll need a little zip tie work to keep things looking professional. Who actually benefits from this screen? If you run a mid-size retail space and need a crisp, eye-catching display for promotions, the 49-inch size hits the sweet spot between being noticeable and not overwhelming the viewer. The 4K resolution lets you showcase high-detail product images without pixelation, and the brightness handles the typical store lighting. Schools and corporate training rooms also get a lot out of it, because the clear text makes presentations easier to read from across the room. On the other hand, if you're a small CAF looking for a cheap menu board, the price point of a commercial-grade LG display may be overkill. And if you're planning to mount the screen outdoors, the 500 nit rating and lack of an eye-prated enclosure make it a poor fit. The value proposition comes down to durability versus cost. LG's commercial line is known for longer warranty periods and service options that consumer models don't offer. While you won't find an official 5